Hey everyone, this is Ricky from Data Mastery. Today we are diving into orchestrating data workflows using AWS Glue and StepFunctions. If you have ever struggled with managing complex ETL processes, then this video is for you. We'll walk through a real-world scenario where we will build an automated data pipeline for customer analytics. And you will see how easily we can scale and coordinate multiple steps using these AWS services. So stick around and let's get started. Log into AWS account and click on S3. Here you can create a new S3 bucket or use an existing one. I have created a bucket called Data Mastery Workflow Orchestration. Click on your bucket and go to the properties. So you have to enable Event Bridge notification feature. It is going to send the notifications about this bucket to Event Bridge. And that's what we are going to leverage when we will start working on building this event-driven workflow. So make sure that this notification setting is set to on. It takes around 4 to 5 minutes to activate this thing. So make sure that you enable it first before you do anything else. After enabling this, next thing that we need to do is to upload some dummy data. But let me show you what kind of data we are talking about here. So this is the dummy data which contains some information about customers, including the customer ID, name, email, country, purchase amount, age, sign up date, and last purchase date. So we are going to apply some transformations in the Glue job based on this data. So based on the purchase amount column, we are going to create a new column which will tell us whether this customer is a high value customer or not. So we are going to set a condition that if the purchase amount is greater than $150, then this customer is a high value customer, otherwise it's not. So let's take this out of the way, and we are going to create a couple of folders in the S3 bucket. Let's create a raw folder. This is where we are going to dump our CSV file. And the second folder is, let's call it output. This is where the transform data will be stored. You can store the transform data into another S3 bucket as well, but just for the sake of this demo, I'm going to save the data in a separate folder within the same bucket. In the raw folder, I'm going to upload the customers.csv file. Click on upload. Okay, so now we have our data in S3 bucket. Next thing that we need to do is to create a Glue job. So let's navigate to AWS Glue service. So before we start setting up the jobs and crawlers, the first thing that we need to do is to create a database. So let's call it customers. And next, we are going to create the ETL job using the visual ETL feature. So in this case, we are not going to use any script, or we are not going to write any code. We are going to use this visual interface to create the Glue job. In this visual interface, you can see that we have multiple nodes here. The nodes belong to sources or transforms or targets and some popular nodes. So we are going to start with the source, which is our Amazon S3 bucket. And next we are going to apply the transformation. So in this case, we are going to create a new column based on existing columns data. To do that, we have a built-in transformer which is called derived column. So we're going to use this. And the target is going to be another S3 node. So now we have a simple job which is comprised of Amazon S3 bucket, a source, and then we are going to apply some transformation, and then the transform data is going to be saved to S3 bucket's output folder. So start configuring your source S3 bucket, which is our data flow workflow orchestration, and within workflow orchestration the data is in the raw folder. Choose that, and in the format we are going to say this is CSV, and the first line source contains column headers, so this is good. And the next is the derived column. So what this derived column is going to do, it's going to read the data from the column which is purchase amount and then create a new column out of that. So let's name this is high value customer. This is going to be the name of the new column, and then we have to add a SQL expression. So the SQL expression is going to be this. It's a pretty simple one. If the purchase amount is greater than 150, then true, else false, and the column name is going to be is high value customer. And the next is the target node, which is again S3. And the format is going to be CSV, compression type none. We are not going to apply any compression. Browse, and then use the output folder as the destination location. And here I'm going to create a new table as well based on this transform data. And I can use this new table in analytics. So I can use that with Athena to query the data and use that in the QuickSight dashboard as well. So choose the database, which is customers, and the table name, let's call it customers transformed. Next, I'm going to give it a nice name. Let's call it customer transformation job and click on save. So we have to provide an IAM role as well. You can either create a new IAM role, or if you have an existing IAM role, you can use that as well. I already have an existing IAM role, which is called Glue service role -customer, but I need to make some modifications in this role, so which I'm going to do in a moment. You also need to make sure that you set up the right number of workers. Since this is just a demo, I don't need 10 workers, I just need the 2 workers. The 2 is the minimum one. You cannot do 1 if the type of the worker is G1X. So the minimum number of workers for type G1X is 2. So we cannot change that. And the rest of the stuff you can just keep as default and click on save. Now the next thing I need to do is to update that IAM role. Go to IAM and search for the role that is already created. It's called customer. So Glue will create a role automatically for you, but if you're using existing one, make sure that you have right set of policies or permissions attached to that IAM role. So I'm going to edit this policy where I need to change the S3 bucket name. So go to S3 and copy this S3 bucket name. So why this permission is needed? It is needed to read the data from S3, which is going to be the raw customer CSV file that we have uploaded. And we also want this role to write the data back to S3 in the output folder. That's why you can see that we have S3 get object and put object permissions in this policy. So click on next and save the changes. Now that we have the IAM role updater, let's go back to AWS Glue. And you can also crawl the data. So if you want to crawl the existing data before you make any changes or apply any transformations, you just want to look at what kind of data I have in the CSV file. You can create the crawler as well, which will crawl the CSV file and create the catalog for you to review. In order to set up the crawler, you can go to the crawler and click on create crawler. Let's call it customer transformation. can add the data source, and this is going to be S3 bucket, which is this one, and within S3 this is raw folder, and then click on add S3 data source. Next, use the customer IAM role, or you can create a new IAM role as well, and choose a database, and let's call it customer raw data. Click on next and create the crawler. And now you can run the crawler so that it can crawl the CSV file and catalog the data for you. So it's going to take about a minute or so, I guess. So I'm going to pause the video, and once it will be finished, I'll come back later. Okay, so the crawler has finished and it took 1 minute and 8 seconds to complete. And now if you go back to the crawlers once again, refresh it, you can see that the transformation crawler has been completed and now it's stopping. And go to the tables, refresh this one. And this is a table which is created by the crawler for you. So it has created the customer raw table because I gave this customer underscore raw table name and it picked the data from the raw folder. That's why it appended the raw as well. So that's why you see to raw. So if you click on this table, it will give you the information about the table schema. So it has customer ID, name, email, country, age, sign up date, last purchase date, purchase amount. It does not contain the new column which we are trying to create as part of this workflow. Now go to the ETL jobs and we are going to run the job that we created earlier. Select the job and click on run job. And now click on runs, and this is where you can see that your job is running. It is going to take about a couple of minutes, but you can review the other settings here. You can see the Glue version that we are using here, the number of workers that we are using here, and the start time. So I'm going to pause the video once again and I'll be back once this job will be completed. Alright, so the job has been completed in 2 minutes and 33 seconds. Now let's go to the S3 bucket and refresh it once. And you can see in the output folder you have a new file and you can download this. And now you can see that it has a new column which is called is high value customer, and you can see based on the condition that we put, which was $150, the customers are either high value customers or not. Now you can go to the tables, because when we created the job we also mentioned that create a new table and catalog the data based on the whatever transformation that is going to be applied. So this is a new table which got created, and if you click on this, you see this a new column has been added which is called is high value customer. So now we have this ETL job set up. We also know how the data that's been ingested to the S3 bucket and how the crawler crawled the data, and then we ran this job. But all this was done manually, so we are not going to either trigger these job runs manually, or we don't want to schedule the Glue runs or the job runs based on specific schedule. So what we really want is whenever there is a new data dropped into the S3 bucket, then only this Glue job will be executed or triggered. So in order to do that, we have to set up some kind of workflow which is going to be based on the S3 events. So if you recall, we set up the S3 bucket property, which was to send the event notifications to Event Bridge. And that's what we are going to use to set up this event-driven workflow. So let's clean up these output files and the CSV file that we uploaded earlier. Delete the file which got generated by the Glue job. And I'm also going to delete the CSV file that I added to the raw folder. Now that the files are cleaned up in the S3 bucket, the next thing that we are going to do is to create a workflow using StepFunctions. So search for StepFunctions and create a workflow. We are going to use a blank template here. And what we need to do for this workflow is to start the crawler to crawl the raw data. And the next is going to start the Glue job, which will pull the data and also update the transform data in the catalog table. So for the Glue, we need to have two tasks here. One is to start the crawler, the other is to start the job. So look for crawler, start crawler, drag it here, and the next is going to be start job, which is going to be AWS Glue start job run, and put it here. So for the crawler, we need to pass the crawler name. Let's go back to the Glue and look for crawlers. So my crawler name is customer transformation. Copy this name and put it here. And for the Glue job, let's copy the Glue job name as well, which is also customer transformation. And that's all we need to configure. So let's give it a name. Let's call it customer transformation. So for the IAM role, you can either create a new one or you can use existing one. So let's create a new one, and that's all you need to do in this case. Click on create. So you can see that it is going to create and attach the policies, but it also tells you that for the crawler, you need to update the policy and put the crawler name maybe. So we'll see what kind of modifications we need to make in this case. So click on confirm. Now let's go to IAM role. Click on view in IAM link here, and it will open that role for you. And for the Glue start run policy, you can see that the Glue job run permission has already been added, but it did not add the permission to start the crawler. So we are going to edit this policy. And we are going to simply say that also run the crawler. So this is the permission that you need to add, which is Glue start crawler. If you don't remember this policy name, you can also click on visual and look for the policy here. So under write, expand this write list, and you can see that we have start crawler and we have start job run. These are the two permissions that we need. Click on next and click on save changes. So now the IAM role has been updated, and we also have the step functions created. The next and the last thing that we need to do is to set up the event bridge notification. So search for event bridge service. Click on rules and click on create rule. Let's call it customer transformation. And here you have to pick the AWS service, which is going to be S3. Event type is going to be S3 event notification. And this is going to be a specific event, which is object created. And the specific bucket name is data mastery workflow orchestration. And here you can see that this is the event pattern, but this is not exactly what we need. We do not want to trigger the step function if the file is dropped in anywhere in this bucket. So what we want is we want the file to be dropped in the raw folder, and then only this event is going to trigger the StepFunctions workflow. So we have to add another condition here. Click on Edit Pattern, and we are going to create an object level condition. And here we have to specify key. And for the key, we have to specify the prefix, which is going to be raw. So the prefix is going to be raw, and don't forget to add the slash. So what this event pattern tells us about, it will look for object created event on this S3 bucket, and it will only capture the events where the files or the objects are created within this particular folder, not for the entire S3 bucket. Click on Next. And for the target, we are going to use the StepFunctions that we have created earlier. So search for StepFunction state machine and select the one that we have created. Create a new role for this resource. That looks good. Click on Next and click on Create Rule. So the setup is completed now. So what we have done so far, first we saw how to create a glue job, apply some transformation on the data, and then store the data in some other location. And next we saw that how we can automate this entire workflow using StepFunctions. So instead of us either running the job manually or running the job on some predefined schedule, we want this job to be triggered when a new file is dropped into the raw folder of the S3 bucket. So that's where we are going to use the event bridge rules, which will capture the S3 events, and then based on the event that we have defined, it is going to trigger the StepFunctions workflow. So go back to S3 bucket once again and make sure that we don't have any existing file here. So the raw folder and the output folder are both empty. Now let's upload the file once again into the raw folder. Click on Upload and close. Now what's going to happen is that when the object is created in the raw folder in this particular bucket, it should trigger the event bridge rule. So if you go to the rules, so we have this transformation rule here, which is applied on the data mastery workflow orchestration bucket and the raw folder within that bucket. We have this target defined, and then we can do some monitoring as well. We will come to know whether this event is triggered or not triggered. But you can also go to the StepFunctions, click on State Machines, and you can see that the workflow was triggered based on the event rule that we set up. Click on this, and these are the two tasks that we have created in the workflow. Now go to my S3 bucket. Probably the job is still running, so we can improve that workflow, and we can also add the condition that wait for the job to complete. But for now, we can go to Glue and look for your job here. Click on Runs, and you can see that there is a new run which is being executed. So this execution of this particular job was triggered by the StepFunctions workflow, and it was not triggered by me manually or based on some predefined schedule. So I can wait for this job to finish, but in the meantime, let's go back to my StepFunctions and click on Edit, for this particular task, which is start job run, you can enable this option, which is wait for the task to complete, so that the step functions workflow will only be completed once this job is completed in the Glue service. So you can click on save. And now you can see that the Glue job is also finished. We can go to the S3 bucket and refresh it. And here is the transformed file in the output folder. So this is how you can define end-to-end event-driven workflow orchestration. And you can also use built-in transformation that AWS Glue offers you without writing a single line of code. So that's all about this video. Thanks for watching. I hope this hands-on example helped you understand how AWS Glue and StepFunctions can simplify your data workflows and bring more automation into your ETL processes. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more cloud and data content, and leave your questions in the comments below. I would love to hear how you are using Glue and StepFunctions in your own projects. See you in the next video. Cheers.